everyone, it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be looking at the highest rated books that I have personally read on Goodreads and seeing if I agree with the general opinion. So I did a video like this recently, last week now actually when you're watching this one, but I did it with the lowest average rated books that I have read on Goodreads, and I thought it was really interesting. I actually had a lot of fun with filming that video, so I decided that today I'm going to do it the highest rated books. So these are the books that on average rather, people have really loved. I thought it was so interesting to look at the lowest rated ones and see, I was kind of surprised by some of them, and we'll see how I actually feel about the highest rated ones. I kind of want to do this video once again with this one won't really work for the lowest, not rated, but the ones with the fewest number of ratings on Goodreads, if that makes sense. However, it will work with the ones with the highest number of ratings. So the most people on Goodreads have read that one. So I'm not sure how I would title that video or what I would do with it. I guess worth the hype, but seeing which books are talked about the most, I don't really know. But that's just me thinking aloud. Today though, we're going to be looking at what books people have really loved and seeing what the highest average rating that I have that I've actually read is, which is going to be very interesting. If Goodreads ever loads, then we'll get there. I know there's Storygraph and I can use Storygraph, but I always forget to use Storygraph, and I just sit here and I suffer. I don't know. So if there are sequels, I'm only going to talk about one of the sequels, and actually quite a few of these are probably going to be sequels because in general, from my own observation, sequels have a pretty high average rating because people who read it are usually ones who really enjoyed the first book and are interested in the next one. That's not always the case, but usually they end up having a pretty high rating. So the first book that I want to talk about today is Heartstopper Volume 4, and then a couple down from that is Heartstopper Volume 3 actually. But those are by Alice Oseman. This is a graphic novel series that actually is going to be adapted into, I believe it's a Netflix show, but I'm so excited for it. They've actually come out with some stuff recently, but I definitely agree with this one. This is such a cute and sweet series, and I understand why it's as hyped up as it is. So the volume 4 has a 4.67 average star rating, and that is out of 90,079 ratings. So that's actually a lot of ratings, but I think that volume was definitely the hardest to read. It was the most emotional and difficult, but it was super impactful and really good. Whitney, who doesn't make videos anymore, but her review is the first one to come up for me. Screaming, crying, throwing up, crying again, which is very accurate, honestly. But yeah, it was such a sweet installment to an already really great graphic novel series. Volume 2 is actually also a few down. I don't see volume 1 anywhere, but that's interesting. Honestly, it's all sequels because next is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. And this one has an average rating of 4.61 stars. And that is out of, I hate how long this takes to load, but I still start talking before it's actually loaded. There we go. 674,365 ratings. That is a lot. That is a ton of ratings. So I do agree with this one. I did really enjoy this when I read it. It took me forever to read because I find that the more books that Sarah J. Maas writes, the less I don't want to say edited they are because that's not what I mean, but they're very wordy. They're very much longer than they need to be. And that's just kind of a pet peeve of mine. But A Court of Mist and Fury is kind of the book. That was the book that changed everything, because that was the first one that was is this really YA? And I think they've started to classify it not as YA, but it got really risque for what people are used to in the YA age range, and it kind of sparked a lot of controversy because of that. But it definitely is, I think, the book that made the series that much more popular, because it already was really popular, but then there was smut added to it, so then it became that much more popular. So I'm really not surprised that this one has such a high average rating, because that sequel, people absolutely loved it. And I don't even see A Court of Thorns and Roses on here yet, but I'd be curious to see what the average rating is for that one in comparison. I was gonna say if it didn't take so long to load, then I would go and look, but I decided to go and look anyway. So 4.19 is the average rating for the first book, and that's out of 948,909 reviews. So that's a lot. But next we have Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, which has a 4.61 average star rating. And I will just say while I'm waiting for this to load that I do agree with this one. This one is like one of my favorite books of all time. I loved it, but that is out of 428,368 ratings. So there is like, this book just is the sequel for all sequels. I'm not a huge fan of sequels, as I have talked about so much recently, but this one just blew me away. This is one where like I am really glad that I read the sequel, because I loved Six of Crows, but I loved Crooked Kingdom. And I think a lot of people kind of feel that way. It's one of the rare occasions where a sequel is kind of more beloved than the first books. So it doesn't surprise me that this one has such a high star rating. A lot of people just say it's a really good follow-up. It was fantastic and exceeded all expectations. And I have to agree, it definitely did for me as well. Next is the first standalone that's actually on here, and that is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This has an average rating of 4.59, and that is out of 930,035 reviews. And I definitely agree with this one. I remember so many people talking about this book, and it was when I first got hired at Chapters when I used to work there, and so many people were like, oh my god, it's amazing. And I had heard of it before, and I was like, okay, like I love historical fiction, don't get me wrong, but I was like, there's no way this book is as good as everyone says it is, because it's so hyped up. But it like exceeded my expectations. I absolutely adore this book. I think it was fantastic, so well done, and just so beautiful. So obviously I definitely do really agree with that average rating, but the characters I think are like the most praised part of this book. The characters, the emotions of it and everything. And it's kind of funny actually, because as you go down to like the community ratings, the first reviews that there are not very high. But it's kind of interesting because particularly this one review says that it's compared to All the Light We Cannot See a lot, and I didn't like All the Light We Cannot See, but this person says that like All the Light We Cannot See was so much better, which I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong. That's a very, like, that's a valid opinion, but it's just interesting because I love The Nightingale. Didn't really like All the Light We Cannot See all that much, but yeah, people are saying just that it's beautiful and emotional and everything, which definitely captures that whole story. It's heartbreaking, but so great. Next, we have Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare, and this one has an average rating of 4.56 stars, and like, I feel like it kind of would depend on when you asked me if I agree with this one. I don't remember the series all that well. I remember reading it, but I don't think I really remember it enough to say if I agree. I think I really enjoyed it, but this is out of 398,812 ratings, so that's a 4.56 average star rating review. And I think that it was a solid, like, very different conclusion to a series, but I don't really know, like, I think I agree with it, but I don't know, I'll just say that I agree with it because I don't have like really strong feelings either way. But that's the third book of the Infernal Devices trilogy, by the way, for people who don't know what I'm talking about. Next is Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas, which has a 4.55 average rating. And I feel like Kingdom of Ash isn't on here because I haven't read it yet, so, or else that one might be higher. But that rating is out of 388 reviews. I have so much trouble reading those big numbers. My god. I would be interested to see what the average rating for Kingdom of Ash is. That one has a 4.60. So is that higher? Yes, it is higher. But anyways, so this is the fifth book to the Throne of Glass series, and Queen of Shadows is right below it with a 4.55 as well. So they're kind of tied. I have like, I don't know if I agree with it because I have had such trouble getting through Sarah J. Maas books in recent times to the point where like I haven't picked one up. I did read Crescent City, but I've had a hard time wanting to pick them up because I know that they're going to take me so long, and so much of it I'm like, why is this so long? So I don't know if I necessarily agree with the rating. I don't think it was bad. I don't know. My review does say I finally God's damned did it, which is very interesting for me to say. It was long and difficult, but it was worth it. So I don't know. Next we have The House of Hades, which is the 4th book of the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. I don't think the other one was on there unless I missed it. Usually the last book has a higher rating, so this one has a 4.54 average rating, and actually just below it is The Last Olympian, which is the final book of the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan, and that one has a 4.52 average rating. I said that House of Hades was my favorite book in the Heroes of Olympus series so far. It was nonstop action, and I liked all the character development individually, but also in the relationships. And then of The Last Olympian, I said definitely my favorite of the series. Loved it. Bittersweet to be done, but now I'm on to the Heroes of Olympus, which then House of Hades was my favorite. So yeah. Next we have Saga Volume 2 actually, which has a 4.50 average rating, and that is out of 101,554 ratings. I read this when it was like really popular. Everyone was talking about Saga, and that's when I kind of realized that I didn't really like adult graphic novels all that much. Like, some of them are just very graphic and it's just not really my thing. But I'm also not really that into sci-fi, and Saga is definitely sci-fi, so I think that's partially why. So I don't really agree with the rating, but that's kind of just my personal preference. Next up is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas, and this has an average rating of 4.50, and I definitely agree with this one. This is such a fantastic book that I think that everyone should read if you haven't already. But that rating is based on 706,329 ratings. So a lot of people have read this book, and I mean, for good reason. It is incredible. There's a reason that it's been so hyped up, and I definitely think that it not only like lives up to that, it exceeds that for me. Next is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, and this one I clicked on before I even read the average rating, so my bad, but I did really enjoy Skyward, so I would say that I do definitely agree with the rating. The average rating is 4.50, and that is based on 99,077 ratings, and I think this was such a fantastic sci-fi story. Well, I just said I didn't like sci-fi. Skyward is kind of the exception. I really loved Skyward, and it surprised me with how much I enjoyed it, just knowing how I generally feel about sci-fi. But I thought it was such a cool story. Like, Brandon Sanderson is a very beloved author, and I think that he did a great job with Skyward, and it is one where I have wanted to continue with the series. Then we actually have I Must Betray You by Rita Petties, which currently has a 4.49 average rating, but this one recently came out, so it's kind of hard to say. Like, when books don't have that many ratings for them, the average rating is usually pretty high. So this one's based on 11,539 ratings in comparison to like the hundreds of thousands of the previous ones. However, I do agree with this. I think this was a fantastic book. Definitely one that you should check out if it hasn't already been on your radar. I was wondering when this one would show up. So next is House of Earth and Blood, which is Crescent City book number 1 by Sarah J. Maas. And this one has an average rating of 4.48. And this one, like I said, I don't really agree with it. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but that is based on 247,372 ratings. So this is definitely one I know a lot of people have said is like the best of hers, but then also there's other people who don't really like it. Like, this person says very messy and ambitious, and all of the world building is like so much in the beginning. So I do relate with that, but a lot of people like the main character. They found her to be very likable. They love the brooding love interest and all of that, which really I think is what Sarah J. Maas does best, is like the love interest and the romance element. Also was wondering when this one would show up. So The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which has a 4.48 average star rating. And I'm not surprised to see this one before Daisy Jones and the Six, because Daisy Jones is written in a much more like particular format that I don't think everyone would click with. But this has, wow, this has 1,006,234 ratings. Sorry, I wasn't expecting that big of a number, and I still could not read it. But this book has been so hyped up and so popular, and out of that many ratings, for it to still have a 4.48 star rating is pretty incredible. I did like this one a lot. I think it was a little bit too hyped up for me, but I did really enjoy it. the emotions, how beautiful and heartbreaking it is definitely something that a lot of people are commenting on and saying it's just like their favorite book of all time. So it definitely is very, very beloved. So I think I'll leave it there because that was quite a few books that I talked about today, but I think it was really interesting to see like how many sequels were on here, what different books were, what like the average rating was, which, as I mentioned in the lowest rated video, it does change all the time. So it is subject to change, and it's not an exact science, but it is something that's fun to look at. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Do let me know if you would like me to do another video like this. I will definitely be doing another one with the lowest rated, but let me know if you would want another highest rated. And thank you once again. I think I already said that, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in another new video soon. Bye!